Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Certainly Allah's deen is Islam. 3. 19. What is Islam? Translation of Islam Kya Hai? What did Allah say? The Quranic perspective. Ghulam Ahmed Parwez 1964. Talui Islam Trust. Registered. 25B, Gulberg 2, Lahore. 13 Fate of Nations. Immutable laws of the rise and fall of nations. We have seen the concept of Allah which the Quran has given, according to which he has initiated those laws upon which the great system of the universe is wholeheartedly in pursuit. He has established similar laws for the human world. In the human world, there is the life of the individual. These laws are applicable to both an individual's physical life and the development of his self. But far more important than this, is the life of nations. Though a nation is merely the name given to a collection of individuals, its psychology is unique and specific. The Quran has also given those laws according to which the rise and fall and the death and life of nations are decided. It says that if any nation lives its life according to the laws prescribed by Allah, i.e., shapes such a system and society which is based on the foundation of the divine laws as defined by Allah, then this nation achieves great prosperity and success. And if it goes against these laws, then it is ruined and destroyed. This is called the collective law of requital, and it is absolute and immutable in the same way that the law of requital is for individuals. According to the Quran, history is a record of the functioning of this collective law of requital. In other words, it informs us that a certain nation established a certain system based on a certain ideology of life, and its fate was like this. While another nation spent its life according to another ideology, and its outcome was like that. 13.1 Significance of history. In modern terminology, this is called science of history or philosophy of history. The presentation of history as a science or philosophy was done for the first time by the Quran. This is the reason why it gives great significance to history. So much significance that it presents history as evidence for the verification of its claims, i.e., when it says that we have declared that the nation which spends its life in this manner will be ruined and destroyed. Then for the evidence in support of this claim it asks you to look at the history of mankind. And observe for yourself whether, whatever nation in whatever land and in whatever era adopted this path, its end was ruin and destruction or not. For the verification of the Quranic claims, or the divine laws. This is such a criterion which is openly accessible to the whole world. This is the reason that the Quran has expressly directed its followers to carry out a detailed study of history. 2 advantages will result from this. Firstly, evidence for the truth of the Quranic claims will become manifest to them, and secondly, they will keep checking to see that no step of theirs is being lifted in the wrong direction. 13.2 The Quran and History. Hence, Allah has stated that we have made available 2 things in the Quran for your guidance. We have already sent down to you verses making things clear, an illustration from the story of people who passed away before you. 24. 34. In other words, on the one hand those clear laws according to which decisions about the life and death of nations are made, and on the other hand the circumstances and condition of previous nations. History. From which the truth about these laws can be affirmed. If you study the Quran, the circumstances and outcomes of previous nations are given with such clarity and detail that it appears as if it is a book of history, but it is not a book of history. Its style is that, first of all, it explains those laws which determine the rise and fall of nations. And after this, by presenting the circumstances of these past nations, it directs us to look and see how these laws produce their defined immutable consequences. And then immediately draws our attention to the fact that if you too follow this kind of path, your end will be the same also. About the opponents of the Quranic system of truth and righteousness it declares, do they not travel through the earth and see what was the end of those before them? They were more numerous than these and superior in strength and in the traces. they have left in the land. Yet all that they accomplished was of no profit to them. 40. 82. What? Have these people not traveled through the earth, that they could have seen with their own eyes what the end was of those nations which had gone before them and had adopted a wrong path like them? 13.3 Fate of Nations. The rubble of the ruins of their cities and dwellings are perpetually crying out to us about the tales of their glorious past. Those nations were far greater in number than them. The ones who are now opposing this system. And far greater in power as well. The flags of their power and glory were fluttering firmly in the land. But when the time came for their destruction due to the results of their wrong path, then neither the greatness of their numbers was of any aid to them, nor could their wealth and power save them from this. This destruction did not reach them all of a sudden. Allah had earlier sent his messengers to them so that they could warn them that the path on which you are treading is leading you towards the destruction of hell. For when their messengers came to them with clear signs, they exulted in such knowledge and skill as they had. But that very wrath at which they were wont to scoff hemmed them in. 40. 83. But when the messengers of Allah came to them with such clear reasonings, they refused to accept their message and announced that we are satisfied with the path that we are taking. This is providing us with all the pleasures of life. You are saying that destruction is awaiting us for no reason. But, ultimately, they were encircled by the destruction which they used to mock. But when they saw our punishment, they said, "We believe in Allah, the one Allah, and we reject the partners we used to join with him." 40. 84. When they saw the destruction facing them, at that moment they began to avow that we have Iman in one Allah and we reject the powers which we used to associate with him. When the results of following the wrong path manifest and confront you, then at that time refraining from these is of no benefit. But their professing Iman when they actually saw our punishment was not going to profit them. 40. 85. And this was not a new or strange thing which was only applicable to them, it is the immutable law of Allah according to which decisions about the death and life of all past nations are made. Such has been Allah's way of dealing with his servants from the most ancient times. 40. 85. And this is that point at which those who reject truth and righteousness remain in loss. 13.4 The grip of the law of requital. In another verse, it is stated, "How many were the populations we utterly destroyed because of their iniquities, setting up in their places other peoples." 21. 11. The state of this nation about to be destroyed was such that they were given 1,000 warnings about their wrong path, but they listened to not even one. When they saw our punishment approaching in a visible form, they attempted to flee from it. Yet, when they felt our punishment coming, behold, they tried to flee from it. 21. 12. But the law of requital called out after them, "Flee not, but return to the good things of this life which were given you, and to your homes in order that you may be called to account." 21. 13. Do not flee, where can you escape to by running away? Go back towards your palaces and those luxuries which used to provide you with such comforts, return so that you may be questioned from where did you obtain so much treasure and wealth. Who were those exploited human beings whose illegitimately obtained blood became the source for the decorative coloring and beautification of your palaces and lifestyle? They said, "Ah! Woe to us! We were indeed wrongdoers." 21. 14. At this they cried that we certainly used to do a lot of evil and tyranny, and all this material wealth is the consequence of that very evil and tyranny. And that cry of theirs ceased not, till we made them as a field that is mown, as ashes silent and quenched. 21. 15. In verse 21. 12. Quoted above, it is stated that when they saw our punishment manifest clearly in front of them, When they realized the truth of this means that though the destructive consequences of a wrong social and economic order begin right from the very first day, these effects are extremely imperceptible, and can only be seen by those eyes which are not covered with the veils of vested interests. These consequences keep multiplying deep within, till one day they become apparent in a visible form. 13.5 The real cause for destruction. Becoming apparent in a visible form means that their destruction happens by those means and causes which can be seen in a comprehensible form. But these causes are just an instrument in destroying their wrong system. The real cause is their wrong path of life. Historians, for whom history is merely the record of events and incidents, declare these visible causes as the reason for their destruction. But the Quran, which presents history as a science or philosophy, does not accord the least importance to these events and incidents, i.e., apparent causes. It points to the underlying cause of the disease instead of the symptoms of the disease and states that this was the real cause and reason for their destruction. 13.6 Sunnatullah. Divine practice. You have also seen that the Quran terms this law according to which decisions regarding the life and death of nations are made, as Sunnatullah. The literal meaning of this term is the practice of Allah, and from this is meant that law of requital which is operating consistently from the beginning, and is immutable. All the laws of nature are Sunnatullah, in which there is never any change or modification. In Surah Al-Ahzab it is stated, "It was the practice approved of Allah amongst those of old that have passed away. And the command of Allah is a decree determined." 33. 38. What is Allah's practice? This is His decision which has taken the form of an immutable law. In the same surah, a little later it is stated, "Such was the practice approved of Allah among those who lived aforetime. No change will you find in the practice of Allah." 33. 62. Similarly, in Surah Fatir in relation to previous nations, their destruction, and its underlying causes, it is stated, "Now are they but looking for the way the ancients were dealt with? But no change will you find in Allah's way of dealing. No turning off will you find in Allah's way of dealing." 35. 43. So they should know that the same law of Allah will be applicable to them as well. Because you will not find any change in this law of Allah, nor will there be any possibility once the law is implemented that someone can turn its direction to face another direction. 13.7 Philosophy of History of Hegel and Marx. In our times, Hegel, and following after him, Marx, has presented history as a philosophy. But what is their philosophy of history? Hegel stated that one idea is born and grows, and when it reaches maturity, decline commences in it, and then another concept emerges counter to it. It also meets the same fate, and another concept emerges from this, which is the opposite to it. The whole of history is a tale of these mutually conflicting concepts. Marx also said the same, with this proviso that this is not a war of ideas but of economic systems. One economic system emerges, grows, then another system emerges counter to it which ends the first system and replaces it. After a period of time, its end is also the same. When Hegel was asked, what is the power with which this continuous struggle of this regular process is being driven, he said it is Zeitgeist. And when the same question was put to Marx, he replied that the basis of it is historical necessity. According to this philosophy of history, there is neither a purpose in front of the universe nor an objective to a destination, nor any concept which is in itself virtue or evil. Nor is there in any concept or system the ability to progress further and to be self-sustaining. Nor behind this great functioning universe is there any such power which is making this magnificent system operate according to some purpose. There are some blind forces which are in action mechanically. And helpless and hapless man is being crushed for no rhyme or reason within these meaningless conflicts and endeavors. 13.8 Quranic Philosophy of History. but the philosophy of history put forward by the Quran is completely different from this. It says there is a persistent struggle continuing in the universe between haqq, truth, and batil, evil. Haqq is absolute, established and immutable, and its outcome is constructive and progressive. Contrary to this, batil is like a weathercock changing direction all the time, and its outcome is decline and destruction. In this struggle between haqq and batil, it is haqq which ultimately succeeds because overcoming batil is inherent in its nature. Nay, we hurl the truth against falsehood. 21:18. Haqq smashes the skull of batil, when we strike batil with haqq, and the consequence of this sustained striking is that it flees out from the arena. And it knocks out its brain, and behold, falsehood does perish. Ah! Woe be to you for the false things you ascribe to us. 21:18. The consequence of whatever you people state against this doctrine is nothing other than destruction and ruin. 13.9. The universe is created in truth. Now the question is, for what purpose does this struggle between haqq and batil and the ultimate victory of haqq and defeat of batil occur? And what force is acting behind this? The Quran states that Allah has created this universe with a purpose and not in vain. In Surah Al-Dukhan it is stated, "We created not the heavens, the earth, and all between them, merely in idle sport. We created them not except for just ends. But most of them do not understand." 44:38-39. But most people have no knowledge of this and think that the universe has simply come into existence and is operating without any aim. This belief is wrong. All the forces of the universe are operating in action for the purpose that every deed produces its precise effect. Allah created the heavens and the earth for just ends, and in order that each self may find the recompense of what it has earned, and none of them be wronged. 45:22. Yet, to Allah belongs all that is in the heavens and on earth. So that He rewards those who do evil, according to their deeds, and He rewards those who do good, with what is best. 53:31. Since the universe is created in haqq, therefore every doctrine, every deed, and every system of life which is in accordance with haqq, permanent values, will live and progress forward, and that which goes against this and is harmful to the development of humanity, will become destroyed. At this point, it is possible to say that this is contrary to our daily observation and experience. We see that the fields of the oppressors bloom, whereas the existence of those people who wish to live according to justice and honesty becomes constrained. 13.10 Scales for determining the life of nations. There is no doubt that this is indeed our daily experience, but observation of a doctrine or system of life or the state of the nation holding this ideology cannot be done in one day. For this, centuries are required. This is why the Quran has stated that every single day of the laws of the universe is equivalent to thousands and thousands of years of your calculation and reckoning. In Surah Al-Hajj, it is noted, "Yet they ask you to hasten on the punishment. But Allah will not fail in His promise. Verily a day in the sight of your sustainer is like 1,000 years of your reckoning." 22:47. Nations are neither made in one day, nor are finished in one day. Their scales of life and death are different from the scales at the level of individuals. Therefore, if the destructive result of a nation's wrong social system does not show up quickly, it should not be concluded from this that the consequences of their wrong actions are not even being formed. In the balance of the universe, every minuscule portion of their deeds is being weighed. Then shall anyone who has done an atom's weight of good, see it? And anyone who has done an atom's weight of evil, shall see it. 99:7-8. 13.11 Balancing of deeds is ongoing. Here, no deed can remain without its result being manifested, but as with individuals, the principle of the health and disease of nations, and life and death, is that while the balance of good deeds remains heavy, the nation stays alive and progresses forward, but when the balance is tilted more towards evil deeds, then the decline of the nation commences. Then, he whose balance of good deeds will be found heavy, will be in a life of good pleasure and satisfaction. But he whose balance of good deeds will be light, will have his home in a bottomless pit. 101. 6-9. This is because good deeds continuously remove the ill effects of wrong deeds. For those things that are good remove those that are evil. 11. 114. Contrary to this, if the balance of evil deeds keeps weighing heavier, tilting further down, then the nation gradually moves towards the annihilation of hell in such an unwitting way that they do not even realize that they are steadily slipping towards destruction. In the words of the Quran, by degrees shall we punish them from directions they perceive not. 68. 44. If this nation rectifies its wrong path before its destruction, and in its place adopts the right path of life, then it saves itself from ruin, but if it does not do this and reaches the destruction of hell, then there is no opportunity left for it to recover. But there is a ban on any population which we have destroyed, that they shall not return. 21. 95. And it is destroyed in such a way that in the words of the Quran, and neither heaven nor earth shed a tear over them, nor were they given a respite. 44. 29. 13.12 The meaning of ajal. Appointed term. In the same way that diseases of the physical life of individuals are different, the evils of the social and economic systems of nations are also different. Then, in the same way that for every disease and the time interval to death resulting from it varies, e.g., the patient suffering from tuberculosis dies after years of suffering. Whereas meningitis does not grant respite for even a few days, respite from the wrongs of the social and economic systems and the consequent annihilation due to these is also of different durations. In Quranic terminology, the final limit of this time of respite is called ajal. In Surah Yunus it is stated, to every people is a term appointed. When their term is reached, not an hour can they cause delay, nor an hour can they advance. 10. 49. See also 23. 43. There is an ajal for every nation. Before that time there is respite to mend their ways, but when the final time arrives then there cannot be a delay of even a second. This is because, like physical diseases, there is an absolute law established for collective life and death, and all this takes place according to this law. This is the reason that where it is stated that there is an ajal for every nation or system. 10. 49. In another verse this is clarified by stating that for every ajal there is an established law. 13. 38. The rise and fall of nations happens in accordance to this very law. Allah does blot out or confirms what He will, as per His law. With Him is the mother of the book, the basis of all laws. 13. 39. And all this happens as per this will of Allah, according to which these laws have been established for the death and life of individuals and nations. 13.13 Death and life based on laws. From the above discussion this fact becomes evident that, according to the Quran, the life and death of nations does not occur purely as a result of chance or mere accident. Nor is it due to the mere trickery of some blind force of nature either, all this occurs through procedures and laws. The Quran states that Allah might accomplish a matter already enacted, as a result of deeds, that those who perished would perish upon a clear sign, which had been given, and those who lived might live after a clear sign had been given. 8. 42. So that the one who is killed due to a reason, and the one who lives due to a reason also. Here, life is not received as a charity, nor does death and destruction occur through deceit. This is because it was not Allah who wronged them, it was they who wronged themselves. 29. 40. Allah does not do wrong to any nation. It is the nation that does wrong to itself and as a result is destroyed. 13.14 Allah does not wrong anyone. Allah does not receive pleasure by being cruel to others, so that he should watch others' pain and torment by subjecting them to the punishment of hell. The Quran states, "What can Allah gain by your punishment, if you are grateful and you have iman? Nay, it is Allah that appreciates and knows all things." 4. 147. If you adhere to Allah's established principles and respect the time span of life, what will Allah gain from subjecting you to hell? To the nation that thinks Allah has humiliated us for no apparent crime or fault. 89. 16. The Quran emphatically declares, "Nay, nay. But you honor not the orphans. Nor do you encourage one another to feed the poor. And you devour inheritance, all with greed. And you love wealth with inordinate love." 89. 17-20. Your state was such that you did not respect any such individual who was left stranded alone in your society. Nor did you encourage each other that it was necessary to arrange means of subsistence for the one whose business had failed. Contrary to this, your state was such that you would gather together all the inheritance received from your forefathers and devour it all yourselves, and you loved wealth to such a degree that you desired that the possessions and subsistence of others should also come within your grasp. You had put in place such a system whose crucial consequence was your own humiliation and ruin. This is the reason why you were disgraced. Allah did not humiliate you like this without any reason. Allah never does this. During the time that a nation continues to adhere to a system promoting good, it will remain protected from destruction. Nor would your sustainer be the one to destroy communities for a single wrongdoing if its members were likely to mend. 11. 117. Destruction only visits those who give up the right path and adopt the wrong path. But can any be destroyed except those who transgress? 46. 35. 13.15 What is meant by destruction of nations? The question is, what is meant by the destruction of nations? By this it is not meant that every individual of this nation is guillotined one by one and thus all sign of them is erased from the page of life. There is no doubt that in the initial stages of the life of humanity it sometimes happened that a complete nation was destroyed physically, and in this way all signs of it disappeared. But the Quran states that by the death of nations is meant that this nation loses its power, supremacy, and government, and its place is taken by another nation. This is called the law of succession and substitution of nations. For example, in Surah Muhammad it is stated, "Behold, you are those invited to spend of your substance in the cause of Allah. But among you are some that are miserly. But any who are miserly are so at the expense of their own selves. But Allah is free of all wants, and it is you that are needy. If you turn back from the path, He will substitute in your stead another people. Then they would not be like you." 47. 38. Look, your state is such that when you are told to give your surplus wealth for the welfare and development of mankind, then among you are those people who do not wish to do this. They wish to accumulate all the wealth and keep it reserved for their own benefit. So, you should remember that the individual who hoards wealth like this and wishes to keep others deprived of nourishment and development is, in reality, depriving his own self of nourishment and development. When Allah told you to spend this wealth for the nourishment and development of others, this instruction was for your own good and welfare. Allah is not in need of your wealth, He is not dependent on you, you are dependent on Him. In any case, you should understand this well, that if you turn your back on the righteous system of life, in which the duty of society is the nourishment and development of the whole of mankind, then Allah will bring another nation in your place and they will not be like you. Here the Quran has only stated this much, that the nation which will take your place will not be like you. In another verse, it is stated that this will be a better nation than you. that we can certainly substitute for them better men than they. 70. 40 to 41. It is obvious from this that the nation taking the place of another nation is in any case better than the one departing. One of the forms of mutual confrontation between nations is on a physical level. From this aspect, the nation which has more material power achieves supremacy, i.e., none among them has a righteous system, their doctrine is the law of the jungle. Therefore, their competition is at an animal level. Regarding this, the Quran has stated, "And thus do we make the wrongdoers turn to each other because of what they earn." 6. 129. In this way, we make one group of wrongdoers rulers over another group of wrongdoers. Or civil war starts within a nation itself. About this the Quran states, "Say, He has power to send calamities on you, from above and below, or to cover you with confusion in party strife, giving you a taste of mutual vengeance, each from the other." See how we explain the signs by various symbols, that they may understand. 6. 65. In other words, it sometimes even happens that tyrants impose themselves on a nation and become a source of misery, and the people become downtrodden by them. The reaction to this is that from below the people rise up and institute a rebellion against these rulers. And sometimes it also happens that the leaders and the people join together and create different parties, and these parties compete and fight against each other. The consequence of all this competition and confrontation is ruin and destruction. But the point that the Quran draws out for our attention is this: that a nation may not be lacking in power and wealth, may be numerous in numbers, may have supremacy and sovereignty, but because its system is based on the wrong foundations, it becomes ruined and destroyed. For example, in Surah Al-Rum it is stated, "Do they not travel through the earth, and see what was the end of those before them? They were superior to them in strength. They tilled the soil and populated it in greater numbers than these have done. There came to them their messengers with clear signs, which they rejected, to their own destruction. It was not Allah who wronged them, but they wronged their own selves." 30. 9. 13.16 Confrontation between wrong and right systems. But their system was wrong, therefore our messengers came to them, but they did not pay attention to their guidance and were destroyed. So, Allah did not wrong them, they wronged themselves. In another verse, the Quran states that it is not that these people were savages and ignorant, they possessed intellect and reasoning. But despite this they did not understand how fragile were the foundations on which their social system was erected. 13.17 Destruction despite knowledge and vision. Hence, the Quran states about the Ayad and Tamid, previous nations. The Ayad and Tamid peoples clearly will appear to you from the traces of their buildings, their fate. The evil one made their deeds alluring to them, and kept them back from the path, though they were gifted with intelligence and vision. 29. 38. Their destruction is visible from the ruins of their dwellings. Their vested interests made their wrong system appear very attractive and appealing in their eyes, and in this way prevented them from following the righteous path, although they were seeing all this with their own eyes. In another verse, it is stated, "And we had firmly established them in a prosperity and power which we have not given to you, and we had endowed them with faculties of hearing, seeing, heart and intellect. But of no profit to them were their faculties of hearing, sight, and heart and intellect, when they went on rejecting the signs of Allah. And they were completely encircled by that which they used to mock at." 46. 26. But since they denied the divine laws and were running their system on their self-made laws, therefore their intellect and reasoning was of no use to them, and the destruction which they used to ridicule overwhelmed them. This is that point which the Quran brings out very clearly, i.e., A nation has a great abundance of wealth, there is no deficiency of sustenance, and they have everything: power, prosperity, supremacy, and status. Along with this there is no deficiency of worldly knowledge. But their desires based on vested interests are so intense that they make their ears deaf and eyes blind, and they cannot even see what is the end of the path they are treading. The correct divine system is even presented before them, but they oppose it intensely, as it goes against their immediate gains. The consequence of this is nothing but destruction and ruin, because their system is based on wrong foundations. 13.18 Decline of the Roman Empire. In the course of a discussion of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, Briffault has made some thought-provoking observations, which we will do well to ponder over. No system of human organization that is false in its very principle, in its very foundation, can save itself by any amount of cleverness and efficiency in the means by which that falsehood is carried out, and maintained by any amount of superficial adjustment and tinkering. It is doomed root and branch as long as the root remains what it is. He goes on to say, humanity does not necessarily stand upon a higher plane of being when riding above the clouds, nor does 100 miles an hour constitute progress. Man is not intellectually transformed by being able to weigh the stars and disport his mind over wider spheres of knowledge. There is a deeper aspect of human affairs. There is something which stands nearer to the essence of human worth than any form of material or intellectual power, than the control of nature or the development of the mind's insight. Power, civilization, culture count for naught, if they are associated with moral evil. The real standard by which the worth of the human world is to be computed is a moral standard. It is in an ethical sense that the word good bears its essential meaning, when applied to things human. And no process of human evolution can be counted real which is not above all an evolution in goodness. A society based on false principles inevitably disintegrates. We quote again from Briffault. What really happens is that the phase of society, the order of things in which disregard of right is habitual and accepted, inevitably deteriorates and perishes. However much the individual may temporarily benefit by inequity, the social organization of which he is a part and the very class which enjoys the fruits of that inequity, suffer inevitable deterioration through its operation. They are unadapted to the facts of their environment. The wages of sin is death by the inevitable operation of natural selection. This was an analysis of the causes and effects of the ruin of an ancient civilization. 13.19 The fate of the Western civilization. Western thinkers are themselves clamoring loudly about the outcome and end of Western civilization, whose glitter and sparkle makes the eyes of even great visionaries shine, as is evident from their frequently published books and articles on this subject. We quote from René Guénon, who writes in his book, The Crisis of the Modern World. Modern civilization has gone downward step by step until it has ended by sinking to the lowest elements in man and aiming at little more than the satisfaction of the needs inherent in the material side of his nature, an aim which is, in any case, illusory, as it constantly creates more artificial needs than it can satisfy. He goes on to say, not only have they limited their intellectual ambition to inventing and constructing machines, but they have ended by becoming in actual fact, machines themselves. The inventions, whose number is at present growing at an ever-increasing rate, are all the more dangerous in that they bring into play forces whose real nature is quite unknown to the men who utilize them. Guénon ventures to predict the ultimate result of these activities. Those who unchain the brute forces of matter will perish, crushed by these same forces, of which they will no longer be masters. Einstein's remarks on this point deserve careful attention. By painful experience we have learnt that rational thinking does not suffice to solve the problems of our social life. Penetrating research and keen scientific work have often had tragic implications for mankind, producing on the one hand inventions which liberated man from exhausting physical labor, making his life easier and richer, but on the other hand, introducing a grave restlessness into his life, making him slave to his technological environment, and most catastrophic of all, creating the means for his own mass destruction. This indeed is a tragedy of overwhelming poignancy. He warns us against entrusting our destiny to intellect. We should take care not to make the intellect our God. It has of course powerful muscles, but no personality. It cannot lead, it can only serve, and it is not fastidious in its choice of a leader. This characteristic is reflected in the qualities of its priests, the intellectuals. The intellect has a sharp eye for method and tools but is blind to end and values. This is the state of society through the hands of civilization. The condition of the individual is even worse than this. The result is that in the words of Jung, along the great high roads of the world, everything seems desolate and outworn. This is that man about whom Iqbal had long ago said. He explores the interstellar spaces, but has left the world of the mind unexplored. He has captured the power locked up in the sun's rays, but his own life remains enveloped in darkness. In the dark night of life the light of dawn shines through the rays of the permanent values which are received through revelation and which are now preserved within the folds of the Quran. These darknesses cannot be lifted till the system of deen is established based on these values. 13.20 Internal change. At this juncture this important question arises. What is that thing due to the absence of which nations, despite possessing abundant wealth and glory, power and prosperity, intellect and wisdom, knowledge and vision, still go and tumble into the devastation of hell? This question is very important, but the more that the vision and intellect pay attention to the answer which the Quran has provided, the more elated man becomes. The Quran asks us to remember. Because Allah will never change the grace which He has bestowed on a people until they change what is in their own self. And verily Allah is He who hears and knows all things. 8:53. This happens because Allah never snatches away the blessings which He has provided to a nation, till such a time as that nation does not change itself. Psychological world. Remember, Allah hears and sees everything. In this short verse, the Quran has detailed the philosophy of the rise and fall of nations, which cannot even be condensed into many heavy volumes of books. It says that the external world is actually a reflection of the internal world of man. Until there is a change in his internal world, there will never be a change in his external world. Then whatever type of change occurs in his internal world, a similar type of change will occur in his external world. His internal world is changed by that thing that the Quran calls iman in its terminology, i.e., the correct angle of view. Through the righteous aim of life and firm conviction in the permanent values which are given by revelation, the internal forces of man are focused on one point, and through this such astounding results are crystallized which cannot be otherwise even imagined. This is that thing regarding the absence of which Bertrand Russell laments and writes. In the world in which we find ourselves, the possibilities of good are almost limitless and the possibilities of evil no less so. Our present predicament is due, more than anything else, to the fact that we have learned to understand and control to a terrifying extent, the forces of nature outside us, but not those that are embodied in ourselves. Dr. Jung, who has been mentioned earlier, set himself the task of diagnosing the disease from which modern man suffers. He reached the conclusion that while modern man's body is satisfied, his soul is not. He is out of tune with the universe. He yearns after unification with the universe but finds that a widening gulf separates him from the heart of reality. Somewhere he took a wrong turning, and in the midst of luxury, is a prey to acute discontent. All these investigations of modern historians and researchers are the interpretations and explanations of the Quranic verse which we have noted earlier. 8:53. See also 13:11. The Quran clarifies the secret of the rise and fall of nations through the change within their selves, and a change in the self comes through conviction in the values of the revelation. 13.21 Hierarchy is first to become corrupt. The Quran also tells us that the beginning of the crimes of nations starts from the top echelons and spreading from there affects the lower levels. The Quran states, "Thus have we placed leaders in every town, its wicked men, to plot and burrow therein. But they only plot against their own selves, and they perceive it not." 6. 123. These great criminals continually invent such types of tricks so that the knots of their wrongly established system are not loosened. These criminal leaders are those who indulge in a life of luxury and hedonism at the expense of the hard work of others. But the wrongdoers pursued the enjoyment of the good things of life which were given them, and persisted in crimes. 11. 116. These people remain in pursuit of their self-interests and profligacies, and in this way, evil and tyranny and exploitation becomes the norm. These are the very people who become leaders of the caravan of the nation, but then take this caravan and deliver it into the abode of destruction. The Quran states, "Have you not turned your vision to those who have changed the favor of Allah into kafir, exploitation, and caused their people to descend to the house of perdition? Hell, which they will endure, an evil abode to stay in." 14. 28-29. But, after condemning the leaders as criminals, the Quran does not exempt the public from its responsibility, it declares it an equal partner in crime. This is because its aim is not that the public, with heads down like sheep, should simply tread according to the call of the shepherd. It declares it to be the responsibility of the public to recognize fake from true, and to only tread that path which is one of safety and security for them. 13.22 Dialogue in Hell between leaders and followers. The Quran has referred to this truth in a very appealing manner. It has stated that leaders and their followers will both be gathered in hell and will reproach and accuse each other. The followers will say to their leaders that you have destroyed us, if you had not been there we would most certainly have followed the right path. The unbelievers say, we shall neither believe in this scripture nor in any that came before it. Could you but see when the wrongdoers will be made to stand before their sustainer, throwing back the word of blame on one another. Those who had been despised will say to the arrogant ones, had it not been for you, we should certainly have been believers. 34. 31. In reply to this, the leaders will say, the fault is all yours and you accuse us unjustly. The right path was in front of you, if you had wished to follow it who could have stopped you from doing this? We have never said to you that you should leave the right path of life and follow behind us. You yourself are criminal yet hurl accusations on our heads. The arrogant ones will say to those who had been despised, was it we who kept you back from guidance after it reached you? Nay, rather, it was you who transgressed. 34. 32. In reply to this, the people will say that it is certainly correct that you did not say it with your tongues that we should become perpetrators of crimes. But you were busy day and night in such intrigues and trickeries from which escape was not within the remit of simple people. In this way you obliged us indirectly that, leaving the divine laws, we should come out and tread on your suggested paths. Those who had been despised will say to the arrogant ones, nay, it was a plot of yours, by day and by night. Behold, you constantly ordered us to be ungrateful to Allah and to attribute equals to Him. They will declare their repentance when they see the penalty. We shall put yokes on the necks of the unbelievers. It would only be a requital for their ill deeds. 34. 33. In another verse, it states that these followers will request Allah to give double punishment to these big leaders of ours who have destroyed us along with themselves, one part as a result of their own crimes, and one part for those crimes which they had done by us. And they would say, our sustainer, we obeyed our chiefs and our great ones, and they misled us as to the right path. our sustainer. Give them double penalty and curse them with a very great curse. 33. 67 to 68. In these and a few other similar verses, this reality has been made clear from these types of examples of dialogue between leaders and followers, that in the destruction of nations both the public and the leaders are equal participants. Leaders, because they make the public instruments for their own vested interests, and the public because they become agreeable to be tools for the sake of the greed of these evil leaders. The power of leaders is indeed via the public. 13.24 Leader nations and follower nations. Then, just as the different classes of a nation by becoming influenced by each other become different links in the chains of destruction and ruin, in the same way one nation by imitating another nation falls into the hell of destruction. The Quran states, He will say, Enter you in the company of the peoples who passed away before you, men and jinns, into the fire. Every time a new people enters, it curses its sister people that went before, until they follow each other, all into the fire. Says the last about the first, our sustainer. It is these that misled us. So give them a double penalty in the fire. He will say, doubled for all. But this you do not understand. 7. 38. In reply, they will be told that there is double punishment for each one among you. Because if previous nations deserve double punishment because they misguided others, then the nations who followed in their path also deserve double punishment because why did they shut their eyes and imitate them? According to the Quran, not making use of intellect and reasoning, as already covered in a previous chapter, and blindly following others is such a path which throws both individuals and nations straight into the pit of hell. Therefore, according to the Quran, it is essential for every nation that it should make use of its intellect and reasoning and that it should follow the path prescribed by the divine laws. In this way, it will come onto the path of prosperity and success. But if it stops making use of its reasoning and wisdom, then this crime alone of theirs will be sufficient for their destruction. The Quran does not even give permission to follow the righteous path without the use of one's intellect and reasoning. Those who, when they are reminded with the signs of their sustainer, droop not down at them as if they were deaf or blind. 25. 73. Even if the following of another nation is merely because it has acquired greater power and strength in the world. As we have seen before, even a wrong system attains temporary power, sovereignty, and wealth for a short duration. But its end is still ruin and destruction. And how many populations we destroyed, which exulted in their life of ease and plenty. Now those habitations of theirs, after them, are deserted, all but a miserable few. And we are their heirs. 28. 58. This was because their system was based on wrong foundations. Look and see, these are their ruins which after them were scantily occupied and we alone became their inheritors. How many populations have we destroyed, which were given to wrongdoing? They tumbled down on their roofs. And how many wells are lying idle and neglected, and castles lofty and well built? 22. 45. And only tales of them remained. Say, go you through the earth and see what has been the end of those who were criminals. 27. 69. Say to them that you should tour through different lands and ask the stones of their ruins, what is the end of nations given to wrongdoing? In this way the Quran presents the tales and states of past nations, and through the study of historical evidence points to this fact, as to what the end result of a wrong system of life is. But along with this it also states that only those nations who make use of their intellect and reasoning can learn lessons from these historical evidences. In Surah Al-Hajj it is stated, do they not travel through the land, so that their hearts and minds may thus learn wisdom and their ears may thus learn to hear? Truly it is not their eyes that are blind, but their hearts which are in their breasts. 22. 46. This is because it is not the eyes of men which are on their faces which are blind, but it is their hearts which are in their chests which are blind. From the above discussion, this reality becomes apparent that according to the Quran, the decision regarding the rise and fall and life and death of a nation happens according to the system which the nation adopts for itself. The character and foundation of such a system, and its constituents and features which become the assurance for the rise and maintenance of nations, has been discussed at length in the previous chapters. But the basic principle which the Quran has given in this connection is of such importance that it is necessary to reiterate it, and this principle is: while that which is for the good of mankind remains on the earth. 13. 17. Only that ideology, that principle of life, that social system can survive in the world which is for the good of the whole of mankind. In other words, on the one hand it should be beneficial and profitable, and on the other hand its profitability should not be limited to a particular group, particular party, or to a particular country or nation, but instead it should be beneficial for the whole of humanity. This is that universal principle on whose foundations the Quran establishes its system of life, and this principle alone can provide a true guarantee to the life of nations. We have said in the previous pages that even if a nation harnesses the forces of nature, is advanced in power and wealth, dominates a large part of the world, also possesses vast knowledge and technology, and has no lack of wisdom and intellect, if its system is based on wrong foundations, then, despite all these resources and means, it can achieve neither peace nor stability. As long as this system endures, people remain fearful and perturbed, and together with this, due to its inherent fundamental crimes and corruptions, this system automatically progresses towards decline and decay. How the civilization of today is living evidence of this claim of the Quran, we will examine in the next chapter.